seconds, Doctor.
When I wrote the transition from Harris dying to going into the afterlife, I was not really sure how that was going to be done. All I knew is that the transition from life to the afterlife had to be engrossing. It had to be big. And I was interested to see what Will and CJ and Gary would bring to the table in terms of how we were going to do this.
One of the great things about film is that you're able to accomplish things that are only in your dreams. You know, you could really step out of reality and create something completely from scratch, you know, whether it's science fiction or fantasy. This film had that element in going to the afterlife.
Straight from reading the script, we always had in the back of our mind, how are we going to do this?
What is the goal of moving through this? How do we emulate this movement from one world to another? So the whole tunnel idea started with, of course, it being in the script and us not having really any idea of how we'd accomplish it, and deciding we need to sit down and figure this out.
The process was basically just bouncing ideas off one another. I believe it was Will's idea to construct this elaborate cardboard tube.
We're thinking, how can we do that? Well, we need some sort of tunnel. I mean, that's obvious. So how are we building a tunnel? We were thinking cinefoil originally, which is pretty expensive, so this black foil is cheaper. It's matte black, but then are we just poking holes in it and shooting light? And then how do we form it in a circle? And are we putting the camera through, or are we just taking a picture and having an After Effects artist come in and simulate the movement?
Do we pursue a completely digital avenue, or do we try to shoot it as practically as possible?
Ultimately, what we decided is a combination of everything. We basically brought all the tools we could to John Schroeder, who's an amazing set designer, and we ended up in my basement with a bunch of cardboard, a bunch of tinfoil, some fluorescent paint, and a lot of C-stands, the 5D, and a lot of time.
We constructed this tube out of cardboard and blackened aluminum foil.
We poked holes through the tinfoil to have little light leaks come in.
So we made these giant tubes and mounted them on these C-stands with this black foil inside. They were splattered with a fluorescent paint, which we then stabbed holes and different perforations throughout the tube itself and just beamed as much light as we could in there.
And then it was the trick of getting the camera in there. So we put a bunch of gobo arms together and strapped on a 5D and would move it incrementally, take a full resolution still, a raw still, so that those can all be composited on top of each other and you could seamlessly move through them in a stop motion fashion, but also add some digital movement in there since you have such a high resolution still. We were missing something. There was some element missing. It felt too star-like and not enough mind, so we added fog. And at first we were thinking we'd use a fog machine, which we had, but the fog sat too low, wasn't really working, so the set designer had a bunch of cigars and he just blew cigar smoke in through those holes through every take as much as he could, and he was coughing and wheezing.
The production designer had a black lung from smoking cigars and just constantly breathing that nice thick smoke right into the tube, which just lingered and caught the light and shot these beautiful rays.
When we were done, we got to watch through all of them. We're like, this is going to work. But to take it to the next level, we had to bring in a visual effects artist.
We sent the high-resolution images to a VFX artist who doctored them up, who played with them, stretched them, distorted them, added particles, which then gave you the final result of flying through this subconscious tube that brings you from life to the afterlife.
So with all that composited on top of what we actually shot, we had the perfect, I think, mesh of practical effects mixed with computer effects. And I'm very happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Experience new
Next time I want Cubans.
Let's
take
revealing a
two of
whole
these.
new look
Okay.
with a super spacious layout and